Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Chris Broderick of In Flames, and you are watching Interview Under Fire.
All right, hey there, all you Jesterheads. Welcome back to a brand new edition of Interview Under Fire. This is your beloved host, the one and only Sonny here today. And today, I have the honor of speaking with an immensely talented Axeman and Chris Broderick. Man, thank you so much for joining our
Thanks,
IUH series today. Bro,
Yeah.
Here we are, man. Closing on some exciting times here for you and the rest of the guys over at the Mighty In Flames with the drop of the band's 14th. I can't believe I'm even saying that number now. Studio album, Foregone. Yeah, set to unleash on February 10th on Nuclear Blast Records. Chris, let me begin by, mentioning that, even though you are one of the newer members in a band that I grew up listening to, that doesn't come without congratulating you on all, on being such a prominent guitarist in this band and being a part of the journey in reaching 32 years of existence of In Flames. And of course, all the well-deserved recognition the group has been getting over the years, 14 albums. But I feel like, there could not have been a more perfect addition to In Flames other than you. There's just so much to discover about this highly anticipated album and what you are all about. Before we get to all that and beyond, let me just exhale. Two things. How are you? I think that's an important question. And I feel like the excitement of releasing a full-length album after what we all went through these last 2 years has to be really kicking in, right?
Absolutely, and that's part of the reason why, like, I'm so happy to be here. Things are rolling again. We're back out on the road, and playing music for the masses, and people are going nuts, and it's starting to feel like normal metal life again. So I've been over the moon about this. It's been great. Yeah. So yeah, I can't say enough about it. And it's, we've been having really good shows night after night, and it doesn't, for the next few months, I don't see an end in it, so it's great.
You guys just kicked off one of the more exciting tour campaigns, I feel like, for In Flames, possibly ever in the band's history. I mean, with Fit for an Autopsy, who are also great friends of mine. Shout out to those guys. Orbit Culture, Vended. You're in Chicago tonight. You're coming to Dallas with Meshuggah. On actually my birthday of all days, October 12th, you'll be here in Dallas on my birthday. You guys have Born of Osiris, Darkest Hour, Hammerhead. You guys are going to be in Louder Than Life, Furnace Fest. Here's the deal, man. Here's what I'm getting at. One of the things that makes In Flames is the live presence that you guys exhibit on stage. I saw you guys at the Metal Tour of the Year earlier this year alongside Megadeth. Chris, I ask a lot of questions about chemistry between members of the same band because I find those questions and stories kind of really interesting. But in this case, I want to talk about the chemistry between the different bands you're currently touring with, like the ones I mentioned. I mean, there's so much transitioning between, subgenres between like melodeath, hard rock, deathcore, metalcore, thrash. Do you think it takes chemistry to make tours like these work? And if so, what kind of chemistry do you take out there on the road?
Well,
I feel like we need the wings for this.
Yeah, there's always some chemistry, and I'll just go into the chemistry that's on this tour right now. The kids in Vended are, they're just young and up and comers. They're learning the ropes and kicking off the show. It just feels like, they're the new kids here, and they're going to be coming up and working their way up. And then Orbit Culture, of course, they have the Swedish connection, with In Flames, and they've been doing it for a little bit, and they bring it every night. And of course, you can't fault Fit for an Autopsy for anything. They could be out on their own doing their own thing, but they chose to come and tour with us, and they're all great guys, Tim and Pat and all of them, and so it's been a really good chemistry, different among, for me, I've been guitar nerding out with Tim and Pat, and then, Orbit Culture has been hanging with Bjorn and Anders, you know what I mean? And I know just the other night, the Vended singer had his birthday on the road, so we were all there to witness that. So it's a good chemistry, definitely, but I wouldn't say that it's necessary for a tour to happen. You know, at
Hmm.
the end of the day, these things are put together by managers and record labels and all of that stuff. So it's more that kind of an operation than, oh well, like, are these guys gonna become best friends or something like that. It's never, you never see it like that. It's like when you meet the band that you're going to be touring with, then you start to develop a chemistry. It's not, you have to have the chemistry first, you know what I mean?
It's pretty amazing because for a band like In Flames, it feels like you guys are helping out the younger crowd and the younger generation of bands that are coming, like Vended. I think that's an important thing to mention. Who knows,
Yeah,
10 years from now, Vended will be headlining a big show that's helping out another band that's coming up to the forefront. I think it's
exactly.
I think that's a really good relationship to mention as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I also feel like live music is also at the point of saturation because everyone is touring at the same time. Chris, I'm getting to the point where people are telling me, my friends are saying, "Man, I can't get to this show because, this show is happening." Because obviously what happened in the last 2 years, we saw it. But it's a good thing. I don't you've seen the same thing at the same time?
I just think, yeah, well, we see it in different ways because we're
Mhm.
crossing paths with other bands and stuff like that. And I know a lot of my friends are going out, and gone at the same time, but we also notice it in odder ways too. Like, nobody can get a bus, it's a hard thing to get a bus and actually find the means to tour right now. Like, and I just think it stems from people being locked up too long. Like, oh, we
Yeah.
got to get out and do this. All right, we can tour again. Let's go. And the whole world is kind of feeling like that. So I think it'll even back out.
Yeah.
And I think everybody will find the groove of things again. But for my part, I'm just glad to be back out again.
And I want to stick on your part, Chris, because here's, with the In Flames, this is a band that's been around for over 3 decades. For fans and listeners who may not know, I
Mhm.
do want to talk about your journey because you've also been at this for three
Oh yeah,
decades, maybe even before that. Whether it's with In Flames or Active Defiance,
right.
Megadeth, Ballistic, Jack Panzer. I mean, I could go on forever and ever about your history, but you've been through so much in your music career.
Mhm.
I wonder. Tell me about your relationship with Anders and the guys before you joined in. I'm sure it's quite the thrill to be a part of this band's legacy. Like, were you a fan of In Flames before joining? How did all this like come
Yeah.
together in the end?
Yeah, the funny thing is the very first time I ever heard of In Flames, I was over in Germany touring with Jag Panzer, and they let us go in the warehouse of, I think it was, I don't think they were on Century Media at the time, but they let
Yeah.
us in a Century Media warehouse where they had all their catalog of bands and stuff. And Mark Bridie had pulled out. He's like, "Oh, you got to check out this band In Flames," and he was giving me a little bit of history about it. And I believe it was Clayman that I first heard, and that'll always be one of my favorite CDs of theirs. But
That's
then,
my favorite. So it's perfect.
yeah, so that's when I first heard of them. But then, shortly after that, like, even in Jag Panzer, I'd done a couple of tours with them. And then as it progressed, when I played with Nevermore, we also played with In Flames. And so each time I'm getting to know them more and more. And then with Megadeth, they played on the first Gigant tour that I was a part of. Um, and so by then, it was like we were good buddies, and they were always trying to get me to drink, and we were always having a good time. So when the opportunity came to play with them, it was just like, oh man, I would love to be a part of that.
If it wasn't obvious before, this conversation that you and me are having right now is going to feel like a time machine. When you said Gigantor, I can't
Yeah,
tell you like how far you sent me back. I was like, I saw you on Gigantor. I remember seeing you at that tour with Bodum and I
yeah,
feel yeah In Flames and there were two other bands that I can't remember. Yeah, you guys came through Grand Prairie. That was one of the best shows I've ever been to. That was like oh 08. Good lord, almost.
yeah.
I
That
think
was that was the first Gigant tour I ever did.
And
Yeah.
it feels like everything you have learned and experienced up to this point, I felt like you're feeding all of that into In Flames, giving this band almost like a to the point like a new and refreshing layer that it may not have had before. I don't know if you feel the same way, but after hearing those new tracks, bro, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think, first of all, I was really honored when Bjorn came to me and said, "Hey, would you like to, record some solos over the top of this and be a part of it?" And I was like, "Yeah," so it was funny because, for my part, it's like I know In Flames has a very iconic sound itself. So you're always a little bit cautious. You don't want to trample over anything like that. And so I think the magic here was that they still retained all of that. Anders and Bjorn write so well together. And then the three of us, Bryce, Tanner, and myself, um, came in and added our little, like, spice on top, you know what I mean? And so we just hope that people really dig it. And so far, I really like the way the album came out. It's heavy and melodic at the same time, like I know we've kind of released more of the heavier side of things, but there's definitely variety for all. I'll put it that way.
Eh,
So
I feel
yeah.
like we talked about everything, but let's get to the album now because here's the thing. People who are listening to this interview right now, yeah, we're talking late December. I'm not going to release this until we're a little bit closer down the line. So this is
Yep.
going to make for a very interesting time when it releases because this is the 14th album, Foregone, releases on February 10th, 2023. I can't believe I'm even saying that year either.
Right.
Somehow
Right.
we aged 2 years, Chris. Somehow. I'm still on 2019. I'm not even over that year yet.
Right.
So this drops on Nuclear Blast Records. Here's the thing: you guys also recently re-signed with Nuclear Blast. This is an important thing I want to talk about because here's a label that's been known as a heavyweight in of obviously the metal music industry. This makes you label mates alongside bands like Amaranth, Carcass, Epica, Cradle of Filth. We've had the privilege to have all those bands on our show.
Yeah.
What's the feeling like, Chris, having, kicking off this new chapter of the band with the label that's been with the band with all these years, it almost like reigniting the flame, pun intended.
No, it's good. I don't know that I really viewed it that way, but what the sense that I'm getting right now is that all everything is being coordinated really well with the way that we're bringing these songs out to kind of build the anticipation with
Hmm.
the way that we're doing the videos and the press build up for the release of the CD. And I know it seems like it's still a little ways off, but February will be here like before you know it.
Hmm.
And there's always reasons why, a release is when it is. So there are those reasons. We don't need to go into those, but I think that the amazing thing about this CD is it's not just another, oh, well, we're going to put out another CD. There's a lot of thought that have not only went into the writing and the recording of the music, but also just the way that fans are going to receive it. So I'm super stoked to see how this goes.
Yeah, and before we get into the core of this record, this is also the follow-up to the band's 2019 full-length album, "I the Mask," which great album, by the way. I went back and heard that,
Yeah.
even the albums before it. The genre of melodic death and the Gothenburg sound lives on through In Flames. It's such an important part of metal
Yeah.
music, especially in the early '90s, leading to today. Chris, I mentioned you are the newest member and a fine addition alongside your talented bandmates. The new chapter in I feel like it's a new chapter in your career, these new tours, this new album, the writing process so far gone. Did you sense any pressure for yourself? Like, did you have to listen to like previous In Flames albums before you started composing on new material? What was all that like for you? I mean, did that ever seep into your head?
No, no, not at all. Not a chance. Because for my part, it happened so quickly. Like, and this is the way everything happens within Flames is nobody talks about anything, and they're like, "Hey, we're thinking about recording some solos today. You want to come in?" okay, I don't even know what parts, like where these solos are going to go or anything. Oh, well, let's listen to it here. Let's take that part. What do you think about that part? Let's try that part right there. Okay, so it was very just like, all right, let's just do it. Let's make it happen. So there was no time to contemplate about, how I should write or anything like that. I just tried to match the vibe of the song as I heard it, So the more material I had, the better. If I had the vocals there at the time, it gave me a little bit more insight into the tonalities and the mood and all of that. So, it's that's what I mainly keyed off. It wasn't like, oh, here's this big history that I have to live up to or anything like that.
Yeah, I love that answer. I know it's just 3 songs, and if people who haven't heard those 3 songs, please go out there and listen to it because, I mean, State of Slow Decay, The Great Deceiver, Foregone Part 1. I mean, I feel like the band has already one up themselves here with just these 3. I mean, it was so beautifully composed. I don't know if you go to the YouTube comments like I do. I mean, I'm a journalist, I have to, but it's
Right.
the same thing people are saying. This is such a refreshing sound. In Flames are back. All like this, the commonality that I'm seeing. For me, it was, I'm not even reading the comments at this point because it feels like I'm hearing In Flames again for the
Mhm.
first time. That's not an easy thing to do. Walk me
Yeah.
through this, man. When did writing start? And can these songs, it's kind of like a two-part question, can these songs serve as a sneak peek into what's to come on Forgone, or are we just barely scratching the surface here?
Well, I'm trying to decide how much I can divulge. Uh, so first of all, for the first part of the question, your two-part question, I'm going to like recite some of what Bjorn has talked about
Hmm.
because him and Anders were the biggest part of the writing, right? And he had talked about where they did it kind of in 2 stages. They did it in one at the end of 21, where they got together and they did this writing session over in LA and they were kind of putting ideas together. And then they went
Okay.
home and hung out with their families for the holidays and stuff like that. And then they came back at the end of January to do the second session of writing and recording, which just that's the thing that's really happening these days. There's less like, oh, here's these songs we wrote. Now let's go in the studio and record them. It's like, here's these songs we wrote in the studio that we recorded. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that was kind of the writing process for this album. And then the rest of us were brought into it at a little bit more towards the end of it.
Yeah, I'm going to quote Anders here to add along to what you just said about Bjorn. We wanted to make a record that was heavily guitar driven. And he
Yeah.
also talked about how, that you guys have found a great balance between the past, the present, and the future with Forgone. Chris, it seems like you joined at the perfect time. you know,
I,
it, I,
I do feel lucky, that's for sure.
I also wonder how is the composition of songs different for you as opposed to the other members of the band? You're a guitarist, but I'm talking production side. In what order do you come in on the final draft process of all this?
Really, I just came in and laid down solos. So
Nailed it.
that's really like Bjorn handled all of the rhythms and all of that. And that's pretty much, I would say that's what I would expect as an In Flames fan because you want to make sure that you keep the product true to its roots, you know what I mean? And there was a question that we were asked the other day about, us being, me and Bryce and Tanner being a part of the writing process and stuff like that. And of course, it's definitely got to be Bjorn and Anders, but they were cool. They were like, you know what, never say never. There's always a possibility that that may happen. But what I think we do is we bring in the little fills, the riffs, the things that we're individually known for. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And,
So
and
right now, I think that's a really good place to be because you don't want to mess with something that's a good thing. You know what I mean?
what did I say earlier about adding that extra layer, right? You,
Yeah.
you, Tanner, and Bryce add on to that and staying true to your sound, yet evolving on that. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, I mean, Chris, that's not an easy thing to do after 3 decades. You know, you have to keep it
Right.
fresh and look at again. I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but the YouTube comments that they're talking about, you providing your intake on Foregone, your
Yeah.
influences, Chris. How often do you get to talk about this, and who are your influences? I have to ask about that. I come from a family of musicians, so that's
Yeah.
something that I really take heart to.
Yeah, so I mean, I could go on forever about my influences, but in metal, it was all the early shredders like Jason Becker and Paul Gilbert, Marty
Yeah.
Friedman, all of those, the insane players, Yngwie Malmsteen, Eddie Van Halen, blah blah blah, so on and so on, right? Forever and ever. But I also do get into, classical music. That was my degree in college, and flamenco. Paco de Lucia was one of my all-time favorite musicians, and so I kind of draw from some of those influences as well.
You're speaking my language right now because I play the violin. So,
Oh,
isn't it amazing how classical and metal just it goes together just like that? Somebody once said to me, I feel like it's a prominent saying now. It's like if Beethoven was like a metalhead, if he was what I'm saying is if he was a music fan today, he would be a metalhead. That's what I'm trying to say.
yeah. Well, from what I know of his personality too, he was pretty angry too. So it would have
Hey,
been,
it's we fit right in, bro.
yeah,
And the sound itself, and again, sticking on the production side of things, I love the sound production on these 3 songs so far. I'm an audiophile these days, Chris. I'm very picky on how I want my music to sound, the way I want it to sound. It felt a bit more of a kick in the heaviness on this one because the Forgone, the production part of this album, did you guys bring in a team to handle this part? Did you guys as members take roles on this? How did this all flesh out as far as the production side?
I do. I don't know as far as the production side in terms of
Okay.
there. To my knowledge, there was no change in the team, or anything like that. But I do know that there was an intent to make it a little bit more, guitar heavy and heavy in general.
Yeah.
And during the final mastering process, Anders was definitely keying in on that side of it and listening to the masters that he would get back and making sure that they sounded as heavy as he wanted them to. So yeah, there was definitely some of that aspect in there.
Now, between writing and structuring the songs and the production process, like we just talked about. Now, this may be a question more for Anders or Bjorn, but I would like to get your take on this, Chris. The
Yeah.
lyricism throughout Forgone, even the bulk of In Flames discography, they deal with, dystopia, astronomy, dark fantasy, even like angst, inner struggles. You have a
Yeah.
song like The Great Deceiver, for example. It talks about reacting to false flags, right?
Mm.
You have a song like Forgone, the title track, part one. It dives into topics on how the world is technically more bleak now more than ever before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially at a time like today, it really resonates. I begin to think of the tangibles or the intangibles of a theme to your music. Like, is that a big component to songwriting for a band like In Flames through your perspective?
Through this would have to be definitely through my perspective because it's not like I can speak for Anders on this, but I would say so, definitely. There's definitely a through line through some of these songs and some of the lyric material that you hear. Um, but the one thing I will say, and I totally agree with this in terms of what Anders has said about his lyric writing, is he doesn't want to make it so obvious that you only can infer exactly what it says. He wants to keep it open-ended enough to where the listener can take that song and that lyric and kind of make it a part of their life and attribute it to things that they see in the world around them. And to me, that's a much better lyric because
Mm-hmm.
the minute you're trying to be so descriptive about how it affects you personally, somebody else isn't going to be able to relate to that. And I think Anders does an awesome job at allowing that to happen with each individual, being able to listen to those lyrics and saying, I relate to that. I understand what he's saying, even though it's open ended enough that they apply it to their own life.
And it really shows the growth in the discography too. Thank you for sharing that, Chris. You know, it is, I love hearing another band member's intake on, because it is just as important as far as the person who wrote it. You know, it
Yeah.
impacts you as well, you know, as a musician and as a person. You know, with Foregone, even though we're a couple months out, would you see this album? You've done a lot of albums, bro.
Oh yeah.
Let me point that out. Would you
Yeah.
see this album, this specific album, as a snapshot of where you are in a certain time in your life looking back?
No, not necessarily.
Hmm.
I think lyrically, like I can always draw from it. And when you think of instances in your life where things just seem like they're screwed and they're not going any which way. But it's for me, I feel like, even though this has a lot to relate to, I almost see it as one of those things like, for me personally, I feel like, we're pushing, we're moving again, we're on the rise. And so I don't feel like, I'm not even sure if that was your question, like, but this album, as much as I love it and I can relate to the lyrics at this time in my career. No, I don't feel like, you know, I don't feel
Yeah.
like shit, things are going to hell.
Yeah, there you go. And that's a perfect answer. That counts as an answer. You know, I
Yeah,
know from, you know, from the different experiences and perspectives in your timeline that you have taken in, which we've discussed about, you know, and performing for as long as you have, and the
yeah,
people you have met and worked with doing, you know, alongside countless talented bands and artists. This pandemic, you know, the
yeah,
touring and growing fan base that you've been a part of with all your other bands, including In Flames.
yeah.
And it sounds like you still have much left to put out there with not only In Flames' artistic vision, but yours. Like, I can't wait to see where you go from here, man. You know, and it's a really exciting. You're like an Iron Man at this point, you know, going from band to band, but you're seeing results. That's the greatest part about all this. Have you
Well,
ever? It's almost like, go ahead. Did you want to?
yeah. So it's funny because I've been really fortunate in the way I've been going from band to band, as you would put it. It's it's never been about like trying to maneuver or anything like that. It's about taking opportunities when they present themselves. And when you take an opportunity and you really like the fit, then you stick with it. And that's the way I feel right now, you know.
Have you ever stopped for a moment to take a look back at how far you've come?
uh no, not really. Like I do think about points and times, highlights and stuff like that. And even quite honestly, even the low lights are still good memories. That's what's really interesting. I remember one of the first tours I did with Jag Panzer, and I came home with pneumonia. I literally slept 3 days straight through the holidays, like just sick, sick, sick. And now I'm like, oh, it was awesome. what what is
You know,
that?
that's it. That was like $1 million question, because you've been through so much. I don't know if you have a moment like this, because especially in the last 2 years, I know I've had to take, bro. It's a very bad thing that I do. I never stop. Like, I never just, you know, thankful for whichever moment that I get nowadays, and I've learned that. So, and I
Yeah,
wanted to ask that question because you've been through so much, because I think it's important to celebrate the successes along the way. And you mentioned like the negative things, you know, it really shapes you into who you are, you know,
yeah.
and that sucks. I've been there.
But you
Pneumonia
think
for
about
3 days.
it, you think of some of the real trying times that you've had to go through, but when you look back on it, you think about all the people that were there with you, slugging it out with you, and really like trying to make it happen, and
Yeah.
that's a fun memory.
Yeah. And it
So,
was well put. Chris, man, this is the last part of the interview, man. I really appreciate you for taking the time to do this. I hear sound check happening, so I'll let you go here, bro.
well,
But uh,
it's actually the start of Bandit's set. But yeah,
yeah, real quick, you guys are live streaming this, if I'm not mistaken.
I think
Tomorrow,
so.
I believe. Yeah, that's, bro. It's really great. I mean, you guys have Louder Than Life and Furnace Fest, and I have friends who are covering that show, right now. But man, do you have any last words? Is any shout outs? Anything else you'd like to plug in or mention as far as In Flames, the new album, maybe a new music video? I don't know what you can and cannot say.
Yeah. as far, I think everybody knows that, obviously we have the new CD coming out, and I would love it if they picked it up and hopefully, love it when they get it. But to me, the main thing is really just showing our appreciation for the people that are still here with us and going to shows and, you know, just being a part of the metal community in general. Like, to me, that can't be said enough, because that's what, gives us the opportunity to do what we do. And you know, it's just, to me, it's good to see it, like, because, when you look out in the crowd and you see people like either moshing together or whether they're singing the lyrics or something, it's, that to me is really inspiring when you see that you can affect people's lives. So
Yeah, well said. And
I can't say enough about how much I appreciate everybody that comes to these shows.
no, man, I appreciate you. Bro, I had a blast seeing you guys. I was actually in Tulsa when you guys went through Metal Tour of the Year. I was actually the one taking photos. I don't know if you remember my face,
Yeah.
but you guys knocked it out. It was like I was like a kid again when I first listened to In Flames. But real quick, I do want to mention Heartbeat Hot Sauce. Um, where can fans buy something like this? Is this something they can purchase right now if they go to your
Yeah.
website? Or
The funny thing is even before In Flames got their own hot sauce, I bought some hot sauce from them. So you can definitely do it online, but that's the only way that I personally know of to get it, because that's how I ended up purchasing it. And
are you going to bring it with you guys on the road?
yeah, we have some.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. That's what I was trying to get at. I'll probably be the first in line when you guys come here to Dallas. But everyone who's listening, this is
quite a different styles. So
yeah, I can't wait. And everyone who's listening, this is the talented Chris Broderick, bro. Much love, man. Thank you so much for doing this with me. I feel like I would love to bring you back on again. This has been such a great conversation. And everyone's listening, you can catch them on the current tour with Fit for an Autopsy, Orbit Culture. Can't talk to them. I'm so excited. And Vended. You guys are at Louder Than Life tomorrow, I believe. And I think Furnace Fest on Saturday. And then you guys will be coming to Dallas with Meshuggah on October 12th. That is my birthday. I'm going to mention that over and over because that's going to be great.
Trying to get free presents.
That's all I'm trying to do here. You already know what I'm getting at. And then you guys have Born of Osiris, Darkest Hour. After that, you have the European tour. Man, it's so exciting to have something like this to look forward to. Okay, just take care of yourself, man. Be safe. Have a great tour. Have a great release leading up to February. And everyone's listening. You can listen to this podcast on all major podcast streams out there. Check us out on interviewunderfire.com. I think we're short on time. I think there's a guy behind you, but yeah. Do us all a favor, buy the record when it comes out. Foregone drops February 10th on Nuclear Blast Records. Chris, thank you from the bottom of my heart, man. We'll stay in touch.
Thank you so much, man.
I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
On the road.
We will. All right, we'll stay in touch. Bye-bye.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Interview Under Fire podcast. If you guys like what you heard, please subscribe and share our channel. And please leave a 5-star review, as that helps us tremendously. If you'd like to check out more, visit www.interviewunderfire.com or our social media channels on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And finally, we want to thank you all for the support you've been giving us. Keep it burning.